they're a portal to dragon consciousness to our field was through the field of Venus. Now, I have not heard this before, but I was feeling into it. And I don't really know where that myth came from or where that story came from that she was sharing, but this is my own perspective feeling into what she's talking about. Because part of what happened is that as we forget who we are, as we forget our source, where we come from, those aspects, the architecture, so to speak, those light codes within us are dormant or become hijacked in some way. And this idea of a dragon consciousness through the field of Venus teaching us a function of our mental field. You know, this is a very interesting concept. It's a very interesting idea to me, because once you get past the nesting dolls of who you are on the galactic plane, and you get past the realm of what I've been calling empire for a long time. A lot of you guys are Kavasalis community members, so you know what I mean by empire. But if you guys are new to this part of the conversation, this is an interdimensional, intergalactic hierarchy of governance that is commodifying life force energy. And it's all about control. So there's lots of layers to this inception that we call empire, but it's not everywhere. It's only in certain aspects. And there is an aspect of the feminine force that quite literally cannot be hijacked. It's what the Kero would refer to as the undomesticatable feminine force. As it's undomesticatable. It cannot be saddled. It cannot be broken. You see what I mean? So this undercurrent is always there, no matter how many layers of spellcasting get put on it. And in fact, life would not continue without this feminine force being present. Okay, so they can't completely take over the life force flow. They only overlay it. And then the most effective spellcasting is the kind of spellcasting where we ourselves continue to feed it. Okay. So with this dragon consciousness coming through the field of Venus, this is a very interesting idea to me, because it feels like, you know, as we get, like I said, as we get expanded past the galactic, past the perception of empire, and into these more free places, these places of free flow life force, you start to realize that the fall that a lot of people are struggling over, you know, this was something that really was a part of our maturation process. I'm talking about our maturation process of an infinite being in a biosuit. It's like this DNA, everything. All right, let me back up a little bit. Everything is always trying to get itself back to source. Everything is in its way of coming back home. So even when we're falling, what seems like going away from ourselves, that is still a very valuable series of experiences for that part of self that's experiencing it. And it makes that, and so as that self finally comes to the place where it wants to change and come back home, it has all of that wisdom and experience now within the consciousness. So the rise and falls of consciousness is all about exploring self and maturating different individuations. Okay. So when she started talking about this dragon force coming through the field of Venus to help humanity with the cultivating the mental field, this is fascinating to me. I'm curious if you guys know what I'm talking, or have a sense of what I'm talking about here, because, you know, dragon consciousness was hijacked at one point in time. It was dismembered, and we have this in our own mythology with all these holy beings, divine beings, end up getting dismembered. The cephalophils, Those are the saints, the holy people that walked on this planet, the self-realized humans that were decapitated. You have self-realized humans that had limbs chopped off. You had all these different activated light bodies that were an embodiment of their infinite self, as in they were awake past the spells of the matrix, and then they get severed in the human form, and that leaves an imprint and a doorway for that dragon, that part of the dragon consciousness to get hijacked. So once something is dismembered, you can replace those parts with something artificial. Okay, so in this way, that's how dragon consciousness can and has been hijacked. It's coming back into wholeness step by step within each and every one of us, for sure. But this idea that she's talking about, it makes me go, this is interesting, because this mental field that we work with on a daily basis, you get up out of bed and you make your coffee, do your breakfast, your exercises, your prayers, whatever whatever your morning routine is. It's like you need your mental field to be able to do that. And when I'm looking at these spells in the matrix going on, a lot of this spell casting is hijacking our mind, our mental field. It's not necessarily hijacking our soul essence directly, but it hijacks the mental field, so we start making decisions against ourselves, and that's where we lose parts of ourselves. That's where we become, beings can feed off of our energy, because we're making choices against ourselves. We're making ourselves wrong in certain ways. We don't feel worthy. We're, you can fill in the blank, all the different mental constructs that drain our life force energy, or tell us that we're less than divine beings occupying a biosuit, creating timelines in our here and now reality, right? So all sorts of things are afoot right now, and it's very exciting, because with the lifting of these blinding veils that were in place, it becomes very clear that the control systems that once had a stranglehold, so to speak, like a iron fist grip on the trajectory of how we see, how we engage, how we interact, all these different that were, it was like an iron grip that was holding certain spell casts in place aren't there anymore. And the only reason why those spell casts are still existing is because of how we feed it with our own thoughts and feelings. So our thoughts invoke feelings, and then we go through mind loops, and now we're holding that spell cast. So an example of a spell cast would be, so let me first say that spells go beyond time and space, and it affects people long beyond the lifetime from which the spell was cast. So we are impacted from spells that we may have cast 100,000 years ago ourselves. We are experiencing the impact of spells and ceremonial magic that was done thousands of years ago. And there's a mechanism that reactivates it, reactivates these spells, that reactivates that scaffolding, that grid, let's call it architecture within the matrix. Our own choices reactivate these spells. So a lot of the architecture in place that was set up for us to lose ourselves and lose our life force energy and go deep into duality and all this stuff are not in place anymore, but we're still experiencing the spell cast because we are triggering it with our own behavior, our own actions. And an example of that, I'm speaking backwards here. An example of something that triggers an ancient spell cast is making a choice against your own truth, choosing to ignore your truth and instead go with the program, okay? As soon as we make choices like that, we are revitalizing, reactivating the spell cast, reactivating the parts of us that are still in the experience of going against the self. And we're going to do that until we wake up out of it, of course. And this is why I'm saying it to you guys, so it'll start giving you a different perspective in how you engage certain thoughts that come into your field that cause you to make yourself wrong. So therefore you don't listen to an intuitive hit, or getting intuitive hits and then too afraid to take action. Okay, or getting an intuitive hit and convincing yourself it's just your imagination, stuff like that. Okay, every time we make decisions along those thought forms, we are reactivating some of this spell casting that's keeping us blind and disempowered.